So welcome to the show, Kate.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, I'm really excited to chat with you tonight. Um, why don't you start by giving us a little introduction of yourself?
Okay, well, I'm Kate Degrade from Dirt Poor Robins, married to Neil Degrade or Basil Degrade. We're trying to go by our new saint names, but we're failing miserably. So if I introduced as that, I would be Theodora
Oh,
because
nice.
I chose Theodora, the Empress.
Hmm.
I always forget her husband's name, not the actress, but she was married to the iconoclast. So that one, the one that restored.
Justinian?
No, so there's
No.
Theodora and Justinian, and they're really interesting too, because I think she was like an actress or something.
Right,
But
right.
um, but then there's another Theodora who was married to the iconoclast who basically like took all the icons out of the church at some point in history.
Yeah,
And
I'm
then when
not
he
remembering.
died, she restored the
Yeah.
icons back to the church. So on the day of during Lent, that's like the Sunday of Orthodoxy,
Hmm.
we celebrate, that's part of what we celebrate is her restoring the icons. So i I related to her story because I think Neil and I have just wanted to highlight the beauty of Christ in any church that we've been a part of. We were always trying to do that through art. And in some ways, I think we felt successful at that at certain ventures. But once we found Orthodoxy, it really was like a coming home. So I related to that mission she had there. Anyway, yeah, I'm
That's
in a
beautiful.
band with Neil. We've been in Dirt Poor Robins for about 20 years,
Oh, wow.
and we have 4 children, and we've been married 26 years. So, yeah, is that
That's
there's
great.
my
That's
intro.
My husband and I have been married, I think, 27 years.
Oh,
And
congrats.
yeah, thank you. He recently started working from home this last year. So it's been our first year home together
Okay.
all the time.
Yeah, yeah. How are
So
you doing? How are you doing?
we're both surviving okay, but it's definitely
Good.
a shift, definitely a shift. But thank God it's been a great change. But it's pretty
That's awesome.
amazing. You can work together with your husband. My husband's an engineer. We could never work together. We're just way too different. But
I hear that a lot. I hear that from a lot of people. So I guess in a way, our relationship is unusual. We're a little bit like two peas in a pod. Our personalities are, I wouldn't say we're like opposites attract, we're a little
uh,
more similar, but we also, most of our work is done separate. He goes to
okay.
his studio and I do all the house things and the mom
Yeah.
things. I do homeschool. So our oldest is out of the homeschool system. I kind of say I retired her more than she graduated, but I'm still homeschooling 3. So that's
Okay.
a big time commitment. And yeah, so most of our day is not spent together, but we pass,
Yeah.
and high
Well, that's
five.
wonderful.
Yeah.
So you came to the church in the last few years, but what was your experience in church before that? Was your background?
Okay, background. So my mother is Baptist. I think she would call herself Southern Baptist, although I don't even know that distinction so much. But she was also interested in philosophy and mythology and literature. And um, so I kind of grew up in that vein, I would say, but we didn't go to church often. And when I met Neil, he was like non denominational, born again. He had come out of Catholicism along with most of his family. I met him in Rhode Island,
Mhm.
and I grew up in Kentucky. And so there was a little bit of at that time, there was a little bit of a backlash against Catholicism in
Oh,
the culture that I was
right.
in that non-denominational,
Hmm.
in those circles. So even at that time, I had icons. I would travel. I think I mentioned this on the other show. We would travel to Europe, and my mom would always
Hmm.
buy me an icon. And looking back, I love that about her, that she was,
Yeah.
open and willing to do that. But my father had bought me this really awesome, ancient looking icon of Jesus that I always hung in a prominent space wherever I lived. And so when we lived in Rhode Island, I didn't want to offend anyone. So I kind of I put them in my bedroom or put them in my closet. I kind of hid them, but somewhere where I could still enjoy them.
Mhm.
And so, yeah, so our journey from non-denominational, it really just feels like a slow choo-choo ride up the holy mountain, because we kept trying to like tighten up our theology and figure things out, and we were never really content, either of us, to just go along with like whatever the church said that we were in. So I was just constantly trying to devour books on the faith from different denominations. I don't really understand why I never got around to church history like that. It just really stayed off my radar. And in some ways, I feel like I was almost blinded to the ancient church. Like it's, I don't know if it was hidden from me or if it was kept from me, but it was just not on my radar. My
No
big
one, no
fat
one
Greek,
talked about it. No one talked about it back then. Very few
no.
people. Yeah.
And we knew, I mean, we were friends with a lot of seminary students and people who really cared about good theology, like solid theology, but it just still was never, I didn't. Neil kind of talks about it like, there's Jesus and the apostles, and then there's like this long football pass to Martin Luther. And
Right.
you just kind of don't know what happened in between. So once that started to get on both of our radars, probably him before me, it was undeniable, like it was.
Mhm.
Like what I say to people is once you know there was an ancient church, you have to square off with it. Um, because I've talked to so many people over the years that were looking for the New Testament church. And it's like, okay, but what if we found it? Like what if it actually still exists on the earth?
Wow.
So
I have a lot
he,
of, sorry, Phoebe, I have a lot of dear Protestant friends, and I often hear them talking about, maybe trying to rediscover the ancient church, like reform it, not
mm-hmm,
reform it, but remake it. Like,
mm-hmm,
this is all the things we think they did, so we're going to do them now. And it's like really well intentioned, but
mm-hmm.
like, yeah, you don't have to rebuild it. You just have to look it up in the phone book, and like, there it
Yeah,
is.
yes. Yeah, we don't
Yeah.
have to recreate the wheel, which we
Right.
definitely were trying to do. So we kind of went through um the non-denominational to maybe like Baptist to Reformed. And then the scariest jump off, because we were always super involved in our churches.
Mhm.
So Niels worked on staff at churches. We were always on worship teams. He was always involved in the production of worship records. Um, we did a lot of songwriting for churches, but when we would switch a church, or move to a different denomination, we always felt in some way, called to that.
Mhm.
So the last church we were a part of, it was the first time that we actually left without being called to something else. And that was terrifying, to just be like, we're just not going to go to church.
Was it
So
because of what you had read and learned? Because I
um,
had friends that did the same thing, actually. I was really worried about them for a while.
Yeah, so that was prior to 2020. That was prior to lockdown, maybe by a year. My timing is never good. I'm a little
Mhm.
dyslexic, so numbers and me aren't friends. But yeah, sometime in there, I think we were just looking around, going like, "There's no way that what we're doing here is what is being described in the Bible. Like we don't know
Mhm.
what it is, but we don't think it's this." And by the way, they were beautiful people that we were involved
Right.
with. So there was no problem with the people that we were doing church with. Um, and then there was, I think the other maybe allergy we started to develop was toward, I don't know how to word this succinctly, but almost like the corporate element of a lot of Protestant churches. Like it felt
Mhm.
like it was being run like a business. Um,
Franchise.
yeah, and
Yeah.
that started to bother us, just the way people were paid and
Mhm.
building campaigns. And again, it just felt like a machine that we didn't see in the Bible. Um, but so simultaneously, we came into Orthodoxy, I think, as maybe many have, not only through the kind of the COVID pipeline, but also through the Jordan Peterson Pajot pipeline.
Hmm.
So I don't really know how Jordan got on Neil's radar, but we started watching all of his content, especially his, his lecture series. And so that was kind of all we watched for a long time was Jordan. And we both got a lot out of that. Then Neil found Jonathan. And Jonathan was like a little over my head. I loved what he said, but at the same time, it was like, yeah, you enjoy that. Like you watch that and then break it down for me is kind of how I felt. But I'm also used to Neil talking and thinking the way Jonathan
Hmm.
talks and thinks also. So he had told me, I found this guy and I really resonate with him. I think I'm going to join his Patreon. And I didn't even know much about Patreon. I was like, you mean like you're a fanboy or something? Like it was really weird to me. But he was like, well, I want to pay for access because I want to talk to him about our movie and what we're going to be doing. I want to get his take on it. So they became fast friends. I don't know exactly how that went down, but I know they chatted and bonded pretty quickly. And after that, it was just kind of a very easy transition into Orthodoxy. I think Neil visited a church in Louisville, an Orthodox church. He said, I'm going to go and check it out. And I was like, well, have fun with that. And he went and came back and was like, and I don't remember the name of that church. I don't really know anything about it. But then he found St. Michael, which again is one of these things I can't believe I grew up in Louisville, Kentucky, and had no idea this gorgeous church was in Louisville. It's a huge church. The choir is heavenly. It's just so beautiful. And so he went there and was like, okay, Kate, yeah, like you got to come. You got to come with me. And I just cried like the whole time. There was zero hesitancy, I have to say. So I guess I'm a little, my story's a little unlike a lot of women who are a little more hesitant to come. I was so thirsty or hungry, whichever, just spiritually hungry for what the Orthodox Church was showing. That it was
I grew
almost like I can never go back. Like I can never
Yeah,
look back.
for sure. Yeah, no, I had a very similar experience where at 17, I was searching. I really wanted to know Christ, but I grew up in Jacksonville, actually.
Mm,
And, a strong Southern, like the Southern Baptist Church actually ran the town, maybe still does, I don't know.
mm,
But, it's very easy to see that all of these churches, Protestant churches, say they all believe the Bible, but they all say different things, right?
mhm.
And it doesn't matter how good the people are, it's not about that, but there's a drastic difference in their teaching. So
Right.
once I found Orthodoxy, I walked in not knowing anything, but already knew that that was my home just from speaking to somebody who told me about the church. And it was like a deep inner resonance with this is what I am. So now I just have
Mhm.
to go find it. And I think women are more like that. I mean, there are some women that like the debates and the theological discussions and everything, but I think a lot of women do just respond to the beauty of it. And you have
Mhm.
to just go and see. Someone can tell you about it and it might sound a little weird, but once you're there, it's pretty hard to um, ignore the grace and the beauty of the church.
I think so.
Yeah.
You have people like Frederica Matthews Green. I'm so grateful for her work.
Hmm.
She's such a beautiful person to me. But, she talks about really almost being turned off by the church, even when she attended, and then actually like deciding to go through the chrismation with her husband, and only in that actual service did the heavens open up for her, kind of. And even to
Wow.
say that, I don't want to I don't want to give people that idea that will absolutely happen for them.
Yeah.
But I think that there will be people who have been so conditioned away from anything like high church
Hmm.
that it will take something supernatural.
Hmm.
And we do have a lot of friends who were skeptics who had some kind of encounter, oddly enough, usually with the Theotokos, like the Mother of God, which is really
Really?
interesting.
Oh,
Yeah.
wow.
So we have one friend who, when Neil, he had actually been in our youth group when we were on staff at a church, and he when Neil told him we were looking into Orthodoxy, he kind of set out to systematically show him why that was a bad idea. And then
Or you know
kind
the
of,
ending.
yeah, yeah. And yeah, now they're really in deep now, the whole family. So yeah, so I mean, I think it's going to be different for everyone, but it does bother me a little bit when people think, oh, I'm glad you found the denomination that suits your aesthetic or something, like, yeah, it's creepy
Yeah.
like and it's like, no, no, no. Like we didn't give up our whole, like I mean, a lot of our fans, a lot of our friends, I mean, our whole world flipped upside down in a way when we came to Orthodoxy. And I would say that you
Mhm.
don't do that just for an aesthetic. So,
Right.
to me, it's much deeper than that. And I think I would love Orthodoxy, whether I loved the look of, the icons or not. But for me, that's bonus,
Yeah.
it's so beautiful. So,
And once you're in an Orthodox church, it truly is one of the most diverse places you'll ever be. The rich and the poor and the old and the young and the people from every country, immigrants, native born. Like, I don't know of any other place you can go and see such a diversity of people and people that actually love each other and are in relationship with each other. So, yeah, to me,
I
that was one
think
of the
I
things I
think
saw.
every church we were a part of wanted that. And I can't fully explain why that's in the Orthodox Church in a way that I don't see it in the churches that we were in. But absolutely, one of the things that first
Mhm.
stood out to me at St. Michael was all of the diversity of the people and the different languages that were brought into the service,
Mhm.
and even just the representation at every church we were at. I would have women I was close to that would kind of voice frustration at the treatment of women kind of in the leadership, or like the
Mhm.
possibilities for women in the church. You come into an Orthodox church and the Theotokos is like the biggest thing in the room. I mean, you're
Mhm.
represented, there's
Yeah.
female saints everywhere. There's women, they may not be up at the front, behind the iconostases, but they're running the church.
Well, depending
So,
on where you are, because sisters and monasteries do serve behind the altar.
right,
People don't
right.
realize that, but it's
Hmm.
not my understanding is not a male or female thing. It's do you have a blessing to be there? Do you have a job?
Mm.
Like men
Hmm.
don't just go up back there and hang out, right? But
Right. Well, and Neil, in his mind, that where everything is symbolic, he's like, well, you understand, Kate, like when I'm at church as the bride of Christ, I am in like a feminine position. So it's like it's all about hierarchy and
mhm.
positioning. Yeah. So yeah, it's just even our children came very gracefully into the church. I'm so grateful for that, because it would have been very hard for me to move forward without their blessing. Um,
Mhm.
they were really funny because, like, the first time we went, one of them was like, "This feels like Harry Potter church." And it's like, well, right, because like the occult kind of
Enchanted. Yeah.
hijacked, all
Right.
the
Right.
cool stuff.
Mhm.
And then my other daughter was like, this feels like, I think it was like Saeed from Lost. She was like, this feels like Saeed's church. And it's like, well, yeah, also, probably Islam kind of pulled from Orthodoxy. So I just
Yeah.
told them, guys, like, watch very carefully, like, watch everything you can, take note of everything you can. If there's anything that bothers you or seems stupid or scary, like, take note of it, write it down.
Mhm.
We'll look it up together afterwards. So I just told them there is a good reason for everything that's being
Yeah.
done here. And I
That's
said that
such a
with full
great thing.
confidence.
That's such a
Um,
great thing to tell your kids. And how old were they when you were going through that process?
Uh, well, it was 4 years ago. So Ransom he's getting ready to turn 12.
Mhm.
And then our oldest now is 21. So we've got a pretty big spread there.
But
Yep.
that's a really great way to handle it. Children typically do really love the church when they come, as long as it's not forced on them, or like if they just come on their own, like almost across the board, with the kids I've seen, they really connect with the church, and I think it's because they're so innocent. They don't have all the baggage and stuff that adults have gone through to put up walls. So they just accept it for what it is. They seem to just get it.
My oldest especially, they felt like it was what church was supposed to be, like they could see that. They could see, I think the reverence of it was important to them. It's funny because we were a part of so many churches that were trying to be relevant and meet people where they're at. And I think all of my children actually loved that it wasn't casual and it wasn't this like
Yeah.
Jesus is your buddy kind of thing. Like they liked the distance between us and God in the sense that we're showing respect and we
Yeah.
understand our place. Um,
Yeah,
but
it's formal,
yeah.
but it's still kind of a um what's the right word? Like people are still relaxed. It's not like rigid. It's not a rigid formality. It's a very like you're in your father's house, it's being a son, not being a slave. It's
Mm,
that kind of mentality. I see that with the Greeks, especially. Like the children are very comfortable in church. They're not scared that they're going to get reprimanded or
mm,
whatever. There's a comfortableness, just like
hmm.
being home. I think it's a good thing. I think
This
it's
is, we were just talking to our priest about this because of so many women considering coming into the church with children. And I
mhm,
think from the outside, it can feel, extreme, rigid, very conservative. And so then you're like, oh my gosh, if my child makes noise, everybody's going to hate me, and you really have to be there to experience that. Right now, I'm not saying, I'm sure there's people that have bad experiences depending on where they go, but in general, there's so much grace for children in
yeah.
the service. I've even learned to be more patient with my own children by seeing the grace that's given children in the service.
Mm,
And it is really beautiful to see how that's integrated. And well, I was even just talking to someone the other day that I understand that it looks extreme from the outside, but to me, the yoke is lighter than it's ever been in my walk. Um, and so there's grace for what you're asked to do.
right. Well, that
Um,
was actually my next question was how has it changed your family life?
Interesting.
Or did it?
Well,
Have you noticed a
yes,
change?
yes, absolutely. But it's like in unexpected ways, it's
Mhm.
I really think the sacraments for me have been the most life-changing thing. And I can't say that it was like a black and white kind of light switch situation, but just over time seeing God's grace work through confession and
Mhm.
communion and just even being in the church. Um, I I just think I'm becoming a more humble person, if you're allowed to say that about yourself, But um, just seeing my own sin, like being able to see the ways that I am failing my children, or the ways that I am not, that I'm being too harsh or judgmental. Like that was weird. Even realizing that I was judging my own children. I think I thought as a mother, that's your job, like that's what you do. You judge and assess and you correct. And but I realized that how judgmental of a person I was, and that kind of was news to me. I didn't think of myself that way. But when you pray the Lord's Prayer so often, and it comes down to that, forgive us our debts as we forgive those, our those who have trespassed against us. Um, it didn't ever read to me the same way until I got into the Orthodox Church. And I'm not,
Mhm.
obviously, I'm sure plenty of Protestants have come to that on their own, but um I really was like, I am expecting God to forgive me and be merciful to me while I judge everyone around me. And so it really hit me like, why am I asking God to do his part when I'm not willing to do mine? So I think just maybe that one thing has changed my mothering entirely. But then what I shared on the other channel, like about Saint Isadora and
Mhm.
realizing that the home is a type of monastery, you know, that we are being like chiseled by this hard work, like not complicated work, but
Mhm.
exhausting work. Um, that was life changing too, because it went from like feeling sorry for myself, or
You
just
have to
like,
tell the you have to tell the dishes story. Okay.
would you like me to?
Yes, yes, please.
Yeah, I just don't, yeah, I don't, I hate repeating myself. So I get nervous that I'm like boring people. But um, so I bought this book, and I wish I had it right here behind me, but it's the book on the Holy Fools. I don't know who wrote it, but I love the Holy Fools because I do feel like it's just so good to me, for me to be like humiliated in a way. Because I'm very used to being polished, and I'm used to having my act together and presenting well, you know, since I can remember, like from as way back as I can remember. So it's their lack of fear of humiliation is really good for me. So I'm reading this book, and I come to Isadora, who they called a monastery sponge. She worked at a monastery, but really didn't interact with the nuns. She would stay in the kitchen. She did the dishes. She would eat off of their plates and supposedly drink the dishwater, which is insane to me. Like that's hard for me to get my head around. Um, but I love that the story tells that she wore a dish rag instead of a head covering. And so she's just doing her humble little thing over there. And meanwhile, there's a hermit. And I always apologize for like not telling these stories correctly because my paraphrase is horrible. But a hermit in the desert, and basically has a vision of an angel who says, like, you think you're all that? Go to this monastery, find this woman. She'll have a crown on her head. So he goes. He's looking. He's asking. He doesn't see anybody with a crown on their head. He said, "Who's left?" And they said, "Well, Isadora, but she won't come out of the kitchen." So they drag her in, and there is, in all of her glory, is her like crown on her head instead of a dish rag that he sees. And he immediately bows down and starts to venerate her, which just means give honor to, not worship. And then all the nuns like follow suit, and apparently they had mistreated her, and so they were like repenting basically and asking her forgiveness. In true holy fool fashion, she doesn't like the attention and like runs out of the monastery and is never heard of again.
Mhm.
But I felt like one reading of that story, and I was cured of a lifelong allergy to doing dishes, just feeling sorry for myself that I had to do dishes. Um, it felt honestly like, and I know that it's ugly and I know it's ridiculous, but it felt below my pay grade, if that makes sense. Like I've got more
Mhm.
important things to do. Um, and in that moment, it was like, if she can do this, then I can, I can do dishes in my sink with my dishwasher, with these beautiful things that I've been gifted. Like this is not
And you
a
don't have to rinse
chore.
the dishwasher,
And
the
yeah,
butter.
exactly. Yeah, I get to eat, normally. And so, yeah, it really transformed me. But there's a second chapter to that story that's really short that I didn't tell the other night. And that was maybe a couple days after that, I had an exceptional amount of dishes to do in the sink. And so I wouldn't say I was feeling sorry for myself, but it did feel overwhelming. And on top of homeschool and whatever, career stuff we have to do that day. And so I actually painted Isadora. I'm kind of a hobby iconographer, whatever. I don't even want to call myself that, like icon art, let's say. Um, I had done a little one of her to put above my sink. And so I just looked up and I was like, "Dear Isadora, like, help me to know your humility and help me to do this mundane task with joy." And, I never know how to tell these stories in a way that you're not, you know, lying. But like the thought came into my head, if you will, it's not a mundane task. And so I kind of interacted with that thought and said, "Oh, really? Then what is it?" And I just heard, "It's love." And
Oh,
so that's kind of the
okay.
follow up to that. that every time I'm doing the dishes, I thank her for her humility. And I just am reminded that what I'm doing is loving my family, which I oddly enough never connected before that moment. So,
That's beautiful. And that's the real
yeah.
joy of being home with your family, right? It's not drudgery. It's all a paradigm shift, right? It's an act of
Yes.
love and giving. Just like the Lord gave everything to us. He didn't hold anything back, even to the shedding of his own blood. There's nothing he doesn't give us.
That's right.
We're just doing like a little bit. We're just doing the dishes, making a nice meal, holding our tongue, like very small things. But
Yeah, and that's where again, I think maybe I've spent a collective like 10 minutes thinking about feminism in my life. It hasn't been relevant for my journey for
yeah.
whatever reason. Maybe I felt like I was above those things. I don't know. But I can see now how much I had bought into ideas like the
Mhm.
work of the home not being as important. Um, and I wanted to be the best mom, like, because I'm kind of a tryhard. So it was like I wanted to be the best mom, but it was almost like I was still looking at maybe their accomplishments and like what they would do rather than just enjoying like taking care of them, just enjoying spending that time. So, even literally rocking a baby, I would feel guilty because it felt like idle, like I was wasting time. So if I could go back, and my husband didn't put that on me,
Mhm.
my parents didn't put that on me. They did encourage me to do big things, and they had faith in me that I could do those things. But I don't know. I'm assuming that I just kind of picked those things up along the way through our
It's
culture.
yeah, it's the soup we're all raised in. Our
Hmm.
teachers said things, the TV shows, everything. It was a slow drip. Even if
Right.
your family didn't push it, it was a slow drip in culture.
Yeah.
So,
So it's breaking out of those things has been really liberating to just have joy in this simple
mhm.
work that's kind of hidden. It's helped me realize how much of a glory hog I have been throughout my life that I almost felt like only like the scene work really mattered,
Right.
So to lean into that obscurity a little bit more, it is kind of ironic because as I as I try to die to self and be less about glorifying myself in some way, I do seem to simultaneously be asked into the public eye a little bit more. So it's a little bit of a push pull. Because honestly, like the best thing in the world to me right now just would be like being at home with my kids and like doing my painting. Um, but now we're kind of being called out into the world and out into the public. So I'm just trying to be obedient to that call as well.
It's hard. It's really hard to balance those things.
Hmm.
Um, I live about a mile from a monastery, a women's monastery.
Okay.
And so I see
Whoa.
the lady, the sisters working in a very hidden way all the time, and they get no praise. Like they don't want it. They're not
Hmm.
just not seeking it. They would run from it, like Saint Isidora. And so
Mm,
I feel the difference very strongly between myself and them. Just knowing that
mm,
I am online, putting everything out there. It's hard. It's a hard balance because ideally we want to be sharing to help other people to share our experience and to draw them not to me, but to better people than me and to ultimately to Christ. So I don't have an answer for that. But I get
mhm.
the struggle. I get the internal, um,
Yep.
struggle there.
I haven't had the pleasure of spending a lot of time with monastics, and to be honest, I'm in awe of that
Yeah.
world and also very intimidated by it. And I know part of the reason I'm intimidated by it is because it's a mirror, like I see things about myself immediately just based on the things they're, putting value on and not putting
Yeah.
value on. So I really want to spend more time around these beautiful people.
But they're so full of joy. Like they don't make you feel that way by things that they say. It's just like you said, it like their life reveals your inner self to
Hmm.
yourself, right?
Hmm.
But yeah, I mean, it can be hard sometimes to go to a monastery. Sometimes the demons are always stirring the pot and making you,
Mm.
anxious or whatever. But
I get
in
really
general,
excited about the standard that's set, though, and I
yeah,
think that was one of the things that was a little confusing prior to Orthodoxy for me is um, like, who do we look to? And it's obviously we knew we looked to the disciples and to Christ himself, but
mm,
um, it was hard to know what like extreme devotion would look like,
yeah,
and I'm so grateful for all of these beautiful saint stories of these examples of people who did put Christ first and what their life looked like, because we can hold our lives up against those people and see how far we have to go, and not that it's about earning salvation or anything like that, but just the beauty that's there for us.
mhm,
The It's funny because a lot of times when I'm talking to Protestant friends and family, the question will come up kind of almost like, but do I have to? Like, okay,
right,
fine, but do
right,
I have to? And it's like, no, I mean, I don't know, like, not like I can answer that, but also no, we get to, like,
yeah,
it's not a have to, it's you get to participate in this beauty that becomes more beautiful and more joyful the more intense it becomes.
mhm.
So yeah, it's really been an incredible journey. Very happy to be on it.
So I've heard you mention the saints several times, and I was going to ask you to tell a saint story, but is there another saint that's resonated with you?
Oh, wow. I
Because a lot of
love.
people don't know about Saint Isidore. Like usually people learn kind of the more famous
Right.
one.
Yeah. Well, I was talking to Father Vlad, our priest, who we love so much, but he was talking about that it's kind of sweet to put a spotlight on a saint
Mhm.
who's a little lesser known, because they're like wanting to help too, and it's like some of the saints are like everyone goes to them.
Mhm.
So I'm still getting my head around how this world works. I certainly don't want to be disrespectful in the way I talk about it. My oldest daughter, Story, and I really had a similar reaction when we started to hear about like this family, this cloud of witnesses.
Mhm.
Um, we both were very moved emotionally by the idea of being welcomed into a family of people who love
Yeah.
us, and want to help us. I think there's almost this human yearning, like we know that's how it should be. Um, and it's funny because I was much more concerned about friendship, like having friends before I became Orthodox. Like I was always kind of looking at my circle and I don't know, like it's almost like that FOMO feeling when you're in school and it's like a Friday night and you didn't line up a sleepover, you know?
Yeah.
And it's like, I need to get a friend over here. And since I came to Orthodoxy, that has just almost entirely gone away. Not that I don't love people and want to be around them, but there's
Mhm.
just such a warm kind of support of knowing that we're a part of this thing, that's so much bigger than us. But I'm trying to think off the top of my head, like I feel like every saint story I hear it just wrecks me. So this is like one of my thoughts is like the grace that's actually in these stories. I understand a story has power, obviously.
Mhm.
Um, but I think the stories of the saints are different.
Oh, yeah.
I think they can like change a person, And so as part of homeschool, we read every day, the
Mhm.
saint of the I'm a little confused right now because we just recently moved over to Rocor Church. So now
Mhm.
we're on the old calendar. So I don't even know what my book is, if it's new or old. I need to kind of get my head around that. But
It
I
doesn't matter. The
love
book should be fine because it's
yes,
we're just
it's still
arguing
the
about
saints,
what
right?
day it is, not yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But my children's saints are, I feel very close to, at least in theory.
Mhm.
Story's saint is Maria Skobstova of
Mhm.
Paris. Oh my goodness, her story is just amazing. She saved children um, basically from going to concentration camps by
Yeah.
putting them in trash cans and having the garbage men like carry them out of this like whatever, like the ghetto that they were,
Mhm.
trapped in, and then like finding, people to take them out of the country. I don't even know, like I think
Mhm.
it was like hundreds of children that
Yeah.
she saved. And then she died in a concentration camp.
Mhm.
And one of the interesting things there is, I guess, part of that story is when they would I don't even know how to talk about this respectfully, but like they would put people in the gas chamber and then incinerate them, I guess. And then
Mhm.
all of that would be taken to this lake and put in. So I was like, Story, you have to go there and like touch this water, like
Wow.
like
Yeah.
Saint Maria is in there somewhere, like a little bit.
Right.
So I don't know how all that works, but I love her story. Soleil, my second daughter, her saint is Saint Cassiani, if I'm saying that right.
Oh, yeah.
Um, so she was like the first female hymn writer or the first
Yeah.
hymn writer. I don't even know, but what a strong
Hymnographer. Yeah.
hymnographer, what
Mm.
beautiful, strong, godly woman, like, and kind of clever. Um, she had kind of a sassy retort for the
Yeah.
the dude
Yes,
that
she
was
did.
like
It was
who
the
was
emperor.
asking for her hand, the emperor, yeah, who was asking for her hand in marriage. And I think he like handed her a golden apple out of like a line of women that were there. He chose her, and he said something like, through what was it? It was like, through woman came the lesser thing or something like that, like kind of implying Eve. And then she
Hmm.
handed the apple back to him, didn't keep it, which must have been a huge slap in the face, and said, but also through women came the greater thing,
Right.
meaning Christ. And
Hmm.
so that, oddly enough, I didn't know before maybe a couple years ago, that's actually the emperor that married Theodora,
Yeah.
my
Yeah.
saint.
Right.
So she Cassiani was like, no, she wanted to be a nun. So I didn't realize our saints were connected at all. Um,
Did
but
you
and
hear the
then
rest of that story?
I maybe, but remind me.
So Montushka Constantina, I've had her on many times. She's a dear friend, and she told me the rest of the story was so the emperor comes back to the monastery where she does become a monastic, and she hears him coming, and she's in the middle of writing her most famous hymn that we sing during Holy Week,
Mm,
about the adulterous woman, you know,
mhm,
weeping at the Lord's feet. And she gets to a certain line, I don't remember what comes before it, but when she hears the emperor, she hides.
mm,
And so he comes in and he sees what she's writing, and he adds, and she hid herself in fear.
mm,
I think it's
mm.
referring to like Eve in the garden or something. So
Yeah,
there was, that
that's
little like
beautiful.
end to their interactions, But yeah, she's an amazing saint.
It just lovely. And then Amadea is Saint Lucia. That's my third daughter. Um, and so some of the stories, obviously, they read a little bit more like folklore,
Hmm.
but her stories are so beautiful. And interestingly, again, at the time, I didn't know that often people will turn to her who have eye problems,
Hmm.
because she's pictured often with like her eyes either in her hand or in a dish, because supposedly that was part of her martyrdom, was that they, I don't know, plucked her eyes out or something.
Hmm.
Um, but Amadea, out of all my children, actually struggles with eyesight the most. Her distance is really bad, like as bad as my husband's. And so I'm like, well, Amadea, maybe as your physical sight, lessens, your spiritual sight will increase.
Right.
And then Ransom, we chose St. George. He, at the time, of course, loved the idea of slaying
Oh, sure.
dragons, but also my stepfather was George, who died about 3 years ago. I was very
Mm.
close to him. So it felt like a nice way to honor uh,
Yeah.
a sweet relationship in my life, too.
Yeah. And St. George, a lot of people don't know, but he was a teenager. He
Mm,
and St. Demetrius both were not grown. They were, like 15 or 16, very
yeah.
young,
Hmm.
So I think that's kind of nice for kids to understand that you can be a saint and still be a child. And
I tell my children this all the time. I'm always reminding them, like, guys, don't think we're the ceiling. Like, don't set
Right.
your spiritual ceiling at what we've accomplished, because we're trying, certainly, but you need to stand on the shoulders of giants, so to speak. Like,
Yeah.
keep going, take this further.
It's
So
actually
yeah.
like the encapsulating parenthood in the Orthodox Church. I think that's exactly it. Lifting your kids up as high as you can and showing them the true saints and the true models of our faith, the
Mm,
monastics, the saint, the truly holy people, and just do our best to hold them up. And then it's up to them to go further.
yeah,
That's really
that's
what it's about.
I agree. And yeah, they're so much more grounded and just resolved than I was
Hmm.
at any of their ages. And so I am grateful for that. Yeah, I'm so
Yeah.
grateful for that.
Well, I wanted to ask you about something you brought up a little while ago, which was friendship. And I think I heard you on another channel talk about the difficulty women have with friendship.
Mm-hmm.
And I have experienced the same thing. I think a lot of women um, either feel like they don't fit in, or what do you think is going on there?
Well, that's a big question.
It is.
There, so I've definitely had trust issues most of my life with females in my life.
Hmm.
I can look back now and see how I was um, maybe amplifying that, by the way I carried myself or the way I dressed, or I've always been on stage since I was very
Hmm.
young. So sometimes that in general will set up a little bit of a competitive nature with other people if you're doing something that other people feel like they can't do. But I remembered in coming out of like high school, say, into my early adulthood, and I would say things like, well, I just don't really get along with women very well. Like, I'm much more
Hmm.
comfortable with men. Like, I grew up in bands.
Hmm.
And I really did mostly I had my mother, but my dad and I hung out with boat people. I had brothers. I was in bands. I was in the recording studio with men. So in a way, that was a much more comfortable place for me. And men seemed a little bit more maybe straightforward. Women were
Yeah.
trickier, right? They were a little more
Yes.
complicated. And then I had a fraught experience with women in general, because there did seem to be jealousy and things like that, where I just didn't think they
Mhm.
were on my team, let's say.
Yeah.
But I found myself saying this, like, oh, I don't really get along with women. And then I would meet other women who said the same thing. And I didn't
Hmm.
like it when they said it. Like, it didn't sit right with me. So it was almost like I could see it in them, I couldn't see it in me. So I started to say, like, well, but you are a woman. So what do you mean you don't get along with women? So I kind of had to, it's almost like you have to have that bad example to kind of see it in
Hmm.
yourself. So I knew, well, this is a me problem. This isn't a woman problem. This is a me problem. So what's my problem? Um, and I think I've been unpacking that maybe for like the last 20 years, especially raising three daughters.
Hmm.
I used to say I only wanted boys. I didn't want to raise women. And then God gave me three daughters. And they have taught me so much. But Story, my oldest, I was talking to her about some of these things a few weeks ago, and she was like, Mommy, I think that you think men are better than women. And I was like, uh, maybe you're right. And so again, I think culturally, one of the problems with feminism is that it's not lifting women up in all of their beauty and
Hmm.
wonder. It's lifting up men and saying women need to be more like that. And
Competitive.
so, yeah, competitive and
Hmm.
harsh maybe. And I don't know, like, it's just it's like we're a lot of women are trying to behave like men, but they're not able to pull it off the same way. Men can go out on a field and like practically kill each other and then high five afterwards. So that it just seems to be something that us women can't quite do the same way. And
Right.
so as I was thinking about that interview that I just did, that was, I think, supposed to be more about feminism and how it is intersecting with the church or something. Um, I was thinking, yeah, maybe that is part of the problem, that we've lost sight of the beauty of motherhood and what that means to be a mother. And so we're not maternal towards each other, like
Hmm.
we're not being motherly in our female relationships. And even like women who don't have children, like a lot of
Right.
times aren't connecting with being maternal, whether they have kids or not. And so this has kind of just been like a little bit of a light bulb for me, again, in not trying to fix women, but just trying
Hmm.
to work on myself. Um, and it's like a you go first kind of thing. It's like, okay, well, I can either wait for every other woman to become more maternal towards me, or I can just start doing that, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Um, we just had a conference at our church, and there was, I think he was a bishop. I'm sorry, I'm so bad at the hierarchy. I get a little confused,
Is it
but
Metropolitan Jonah?
yes, there it is.
Yeah, he's
Yes.
an old
Uh,
friend. We really love him.
Oh, that's wonderful. Yeah,
Yeah.
lovely, lovely person. And he was sharing, someone had asked how, as lay people, can we support the clergy? And he said, well, we need more priests. So
Hmm.
we need people to become priests. But he said we also, his secondary comment was we need more matushkas, which I'm
Hmm.
trying to say with a Russian accent. My daughter Story's learning Russian because she's dating a Russian guy, and we go to a Russian church, so she keeps correcting my pronunciations. But I was thinking about it, and it was like, well, what about the rest of us, who aren't priests or
Hmm.
matushkas? And I mean, it was like the answer came so quickly that it was almost silly, but it was like, well, we're all to be those things,
Yeah.
maybe not at that level. Um,
Hmm.
but we should all be loving the people around us as if they're our children in a way. So yeah, again, I think the biggest thing is I'm just trying not to judge people. I'm trying to
Yeah.
love without judgment. um but I think women have, I think they've been hurt. They've been hurt by a culture that tells them
Hmm.
they need to be something different than they are. So yeah,
Yeah.
somebody's got to go first. Somebody's got to just start loving people and taking
Totally
the
agree.
pressure off.
Yeah, I agree with everything you said. I guess my one thing that I would add to it would be um, part of the problem and part of the solution. Part of the problem is that female multi-generational relationships have disintegrated.
Mm,
Right? Very few people have relationships with their grandmother, their aunts, their cousins. If you
hmm.
have that, you're actually ahead of the game, I think, and it's a great blessing because you get those hopefully healthy relationships where those are family ties where ideally you're loved, even if you're the weird uncle or,
Right.
like the family actually embraces all of the idiosyncrasies of everybody in the family,
Hmm.
right? Ideally. And I know with a lot of American families, certainly with myself, it was like we had very little contact with extended family. And then for a lot of people now, they're individuals. And so they don't actually have like loving loving grandmother figures, aunt figures that can pour that love into them and actually show them how to do it. Because that's what we
Mm,
need. We need people to actually show us how to do it.
hmm.
It's like you can read about it, but if you don't have someone in your life like that, how do you know how to do that thing, right?
Right.
How do you know
Right.
how to be a mom if you weren't mothered, right? You can
Mm,
figure it out maybe, but it's a lot harder. So that's what I think the church has, which we talked about, I think earlier, right? You have all these older women that if you, if you seek out that relationship with them, I think many of them want that. Like they want to show you.
mm.
I think you brought up, decorating on Holy Friday, the epitaphia, the big
So beautiful.
tomb,
Hmm.
right? Like they love that. They want to pass, their love and the tradition and everything on to you. And so I think that's what we need more of, coming together
Absolutely.
like that.
That was, I didn't experience that as much in our Protestant churches. I think because um, some of our choices were leading towards more, I don't want to say like hipster church, but in a way it was a lot of like young seminary students
Hmm.
and kind of cool music. And so that was something that started to kind of leave our world, was the older
Right.
believers. And so, yeah, the matushkas, the yayas, we came from a Greek church. So we were at a
Hmm.
Greek church and now we're at a Russian. And I just loved all of the yayas. And like they're a little suspicious at first, but
Yeah.
then when you kind of win them over,
Hmm.
it's been so beautiful to watch my children interact with older people. Like again, in America, it's we kind of put our old people away, right? And
Hmm.
we're scared of death and we're scared of that whole process. And so you're right, there's been this like cord that's kind of severed from teaching us how to nurture and love, the way it's been done since the beginning of time. So yeah, I'm very grateful for that presence
Yeah.
of the giants that came before us.
Yeah. We had an older Russian grandma. She's still alive, but I met her when I was probably 20, and she grew up in Moscow, and she was learning to drive at like 50. And so she wanted my husband and I to ride over a curvy mountain road, drive with her to church. She would drive. And it was terrifying because she'd never driven before. It's just like full speed ahead the whole time.
Yeah.
But I learned so much from her, and I got to reconnect with her about 6 or 7 years ago. And every time I'm with her, like she just says I think I said something like, well, pray for my parents. They're already gone. I think she'd lost the ones we were talking about, lost. She just stood up straight and just, have mercy, O Lord, on thy servant, and just started praying right there. And it's like, it's not only what they say, it's
Mm,
who they are. It's
yeah.
like their being, like, I really worry. In fact, I did a whole thing on Mano's show on grandparents a couple
Mm,
months ago, or maybe a year ago, for this very thing. We have to start being the middle-aged women. We have to start being the type of women they're going to be like that when we're 80. And I'm
mm,
worried that we're not being that. I worry about that a lot.
mm.
Maybe I shouldn't worry. I'm a worrier. But this is like the type of thing I think about. Like, you can't just become that in a year. Like, that takes a lifetime of faith and of prayer and fasting and loving the people around you. So I'm hoping to be like a fraction of that in 40 years. I'm nowhere near it.
It's like there's no faking that.
Right.
And there's so much of our life we're trying to kind of fake it till you make it, or
Hmm.
kind of pretend that we're something that we aren't. And old age really, I think, brings out the true essence, like
Yeah.
really what you spent your time on
Hmm.
is going to come out as everything else kind of starts to fall apart. You can't keep up that persona. And so I agree with you. I think about that a lot. That I hope that I'm becoming a person that's going to be gentle and kind and not judgmental.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, but it's like, well, I won't if that's not what I spend my time doing,
Right.
if that's not what I spend my time doing. So yeah, I agree. I'm trying to learn from those ladies. And they're really, even back in our Protestant days, like I would always be on stage doing whatever we were doing. But the women that really stuck out to me were the ones that were up all night cooking for the next day. Like
Yeah.
I was like, how do I become that? I so admired these women who could do these, like, I mean, it felt like a domestic feat to me. Like it was just like, I don't know how you cook for that many people and how you do it with a smile on your face. And then also the woman that always stuck out to me would be always the one like at a party or any kind of thing where they're off to the side
Mm.
and you just see them kind of counseling like the whole time. Like they're
Yeah.
just there, they're kind of set up, they got their little office set up, and they just kind of take turns with people who are just talking to them and sharing with them. And I just remember thinking, like, how do you become that, especially if you're like
Mhm.
stuck on stage? Like I can't be that if I'm this. And so I always felt a little othered than, in that way as well. But um,
You can be both, Kate. You can be both. You
I hope
can.
so.
Yeah.
I hope so. Yeah, like even we just did Father Josiah's conference,
Hmm.
marriage conference a few months ago. And and I struggle actually with a little bit of stage fright because I'm a perfectionist. And most of our career for the last 20 years, we really chose to put our children ahead of what we could do with our career. So most of what we've done has been online. We chose not to tour. We chose not to do many live performances. So, in a sense, we're kind of a studio band. And so, coming back into performing live, I do have a little bit of nervousness that happens because I don't feel like my experience has made our live performances as perfect as we get it in the studio, you know? And so I feel like this immense pressure to like get it perfect. But my favorite parts of that weekend were just hearing women's stories, you know, the people that were willing to. I know when they see somebody on the stage, they think, oh, she's not going to want to talk to me, or I don't want to bore her, or, and those were my favorite parts, were times when women were like brave enough, if you will, to just be like, can I share, you know, 2 minutes of my story with you? Um, so I don't know. I'm kind of falling in love with women in a weird way, maybe for the first time.
Yeah.
Um, and maybe some of
Yeah.
that, you know, not to get like cheesy and psychological, but you know, maybe I'm forgiving my own self and
Hmm.
kind of loving myself in a better way and forgiving myself. But yeah, I don't
Yeah.
know.
I
It's
mean,
it's a beautiful thing.
yeah, we have to be real that women do have a tendency to bicker, to cut each other down. I don't know how many times I've met people and then they do the up and down on you, like, huh, what are you wearing? Like, what I want to wear. I don't know why you care.
Yeah, yeah.
But Mean Girls is a movie for a reason, right? Like, and raising daughters, I raised two. It was pretty shocking to see how sweet little girls, all of a sudden, when their hormones come in, just got so nasty. And these were not bad kids. These were,
Yeah.
Christian homeschooling kids. But you know, I think it's a real temptation for women, and some women don't seem to come out of it for a long time. But I think, like you're saying, acknowledging like there's a little bit of that in all of us. It's
Sure.
much easier to tear someone down. I guess it makes us feel like we're better than them if we can lower them a bit in our own eyes or something. But
Mm,
the way forward is to is to reforge those relationships and find healing in that. In fact, Metropolitan Jonah talks quite a bit about a lot of our healing is done in the context of relationship. I mean,
mm,
the closest ones obviously are most important, but as we go out, like that's how we're healed from a lot of these passions that we have. So,
hmm.
you
Well,
know,
I've heard it explained too that it, you know, for every deficiency or sin, that there's like a, you know, like a counterbalance of merit,
yeah.
right? And so
Hmm.
it makes sense that as relational people, like we're the people that are kind of the glue, right? Like
Hmm.
we're holding the relationships together. We're very horizontally minded, you know, we're
Hmm.
looking at Neil. I can't tell you how many
Yeah.
times Neil's been like, Kate, get your head out of the weeds, you know, like quit, like do this. You don't need to do that so much. But so it makes sense that because that's maybe how we're
Yeah.
wired, then we're also going to be more apt to look at people's weaknesses or
Hmm.
judge or gossip. And
Right.
so this is something I'm trying to reinforce in my daughters, especially because my three youngest do theater, at musical theater, and that can be a pretty gossipy crew because it's a bunch of, you know, drama queens and kings. And but to see that merit, to see that it's like, no, this gift of observation is meant to bring people together, not
Right.
separate people, you know. And
Exactly.
when we use that gift
Hmm.
to other than people or separate or put people out, that it, you know, that's not what we're supposed to do. So just trying to show them that there's a beautiful side to that too. It's not just that women are gossipy, it's that we're
Right.
relational, you know. So just looking at the good sides of that. But yes, we have definitely we've not been spared from cruel
Yeah.
treatment from young
Yeah.
people and girls specifically sometimes. I definitely had a pretty rough go of it as a kid.
Hmm.
Um, but even that, just having compassion on those children, and
Yeah.
instead of, I don't want to look at that type of person as a mean girl. I want to
Hmm.
know that hurt people. And for whatever
Hmm.
reason, that's what they were taught, by somebody who was also hurt. Um, my daughters listened to Noah Kahn for a while. Do you know who he is? He's like a
No, I
pop.
don't.
It's kind of like pop folk.
Oh.
It's cute though, and he's kind of insightful. It's kind of deep, but he had this line, "I'm mad at my parents for what their parents did to them."
Uh,
And that line stuck
that's so
out to me,
true.
Yeah, and my
Yeah.
daughter Soleil, she's really into psychology. She had thought about maybe going into that as a field, but she's so good on the stage that I think she's probably going to end up going in that direction. But she likes the making those connections and like figuring out what makes people tick. And her and I were talking about that, and it's like, yeah, you can't be bitter really for how you
Hmm.
grew up because they're just working off what they were, it just keeps going back and back and back. So
Yeah.
you're freed. I love the freedom of removing that judgment, that it's not up to me, like I don't have to sort all that out. It's not my job to pass or fail people. It's just my job to worry about yourself, right?
Yeah.
Like that's what we say
Absolutely.
in our house all the time. Worry about yourself.
Absolutely.
So
We never know the burdens other people carry. And maybe if I had those burdens, I'd be 5 times worse than they are. We really don't know. So,
no.
well, Kate, it's been a delight chatting with you.
Yeah, thank you.
Can you tell us about your music, where people can find it, or anything you want to share?
Yeah, so we're pretty much on every platform. Dirt
Mhm.
Poor Robins, Robins like the bird, 1B.
Mhm.
We're not on TikTok. That's pretty much the only one that we're not on. But pretty much wherever you find your music, we will be there. We have tons of content on YouTube.
Mhm.
We have lyric videos for most of our songs. So if you're interested in the lyrics, you can get to know them there. We do have Queen of the Night, our movie, our silent film there,
Wow. Okay.
that's doing pretty well. We are working on a new project coming up, and I think maybe some collabs with some other interesting people.
Very good.
Yeah, and we might be doing some touring in the new year. We're looking at some possibilities of like house shows.
Okay.
Um,
That would
we
be
took
fun and intimate. Huh.
Yeah, well, and
Yeah.
we're really enjoying kind of the storytelling aspect of
Mhm.
what we do, and so to pull off our sound live really requires a giant band,
Mm.
which is just not really like lucrative at this point. So Neil and I are thinking of just really breaking it down to a very intimate kind of thing and just really connecting with people. So yeah, so be on the lookout
Yeah.
for all those things. Oh, hi, Luna. Are you saying hi? There's my dog head.
Fantastic. Hi,
Yeah.
Luna.
Thank you so much for having me. This was really, really enjoyable.
Yeah, it's been a delight, Kate, truly. So,